D. McClung, Artra Monologues, where I talk and you listen, or not. All right, I'm going to share with you a newsletter I got from Downsize DC. And if you're not familiar with Downsize DC, you should be. Basically, it's an organization which saw fit to become a tax-exempt organization by using the mechanics of the IRS and so on, which is sort of ironic in a sense, because they're like opposed to tyranny and bullies and criminals, and yet they play the game. And sorry, but I just don't, because that would be like collaborating with the enemy. That'd be like saying, I hate the government, but I'm going to ask the government permission to, hate it. Kind of silly. Anyway, Downside DC. I mean, I guess their heart's in the right place. They mean well. And they probably believe in what they're doing. The fact that they do occasionally ask me for money is a bit disturbing, but I guess any organization of the magnitude of Downside DC, and I don't know how big or small it is, but they have expenses. They're trying to do something important, something they believe in, and they have to have money to do that, because most people have to eat. And sometimes when you're using somebody's service to do what you want to do, like in this case, Downsize DC is using like the internet and various media to get the message out, and that costs money, apparently. And I suppose they have staff on their organization, which is, I'm going to say, like a, if they're claiming tax-exempt status, whatever works for them is fine. But I'm just saying, I'm not going to be asking the government for permission to work against it. That'd be like a slave asking permission from his master to hate his master. Really, that's a good example. It's very close. It's very close to the point that I'm making. I think you could probably imagine, I would hope, that you could imagine that what if you were a slave and you were working on a freaking plantation in, say, Georgia or Mississippi. Did I say black slave? Any kind of slave. And you're working on a plantation in, say, Georgia, and that plantation is owned by some guy, and he's got employees that help him run the farm, the plantation, and they own you because they bought you at a slave auction. I'm asking you to go back in time to the 1850s, for example, in America, where slavery existed. It wasn't legal, in the strict sense of the word legal. It wasn't. It was a crime because you had to own people. It's just wrong. And suppose you're a slave, and there's the master, and you're thinking, I hate him because, one, he whipped the shit out of me with a bullwhip. Really fucked up my back big time. Never recovered from that. I have scars on my back forever. Because that motherfucker took a whip to my backside and hurt me considerably, because I refused to, accept the name he gave me. Like, your name is Insel Washington or something. No, my name, Gunta Kente. Gunta Kente. Whip, 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 whip. What's your name? Gunta Kente. Whip, 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 whip. I saw the movie. About beat that poor slave to death because he refused to accept the white man's name. No, I'm not going to be John Washington. I am Kunta Kinte. Now, John Washington's not the name, I don't think, because I don't remember the name the white guy wanted to give to the black guy, but I do remember Kunta Kinte. My name Kunta Kinte. Beat me to death. I don't give a fuck. I'm not going to change my mind. I'm Kunta Kinte. I'm Kunta Kinte. Damn it. Accept that, because I'm a human being. Whip, 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 whip. Lash, 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 lash. Cut, cut, cut. Bleed, bleed, bleed. Ow, pain, 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 pain. So this slave, put yourself in that position. You've just been whipped severely by this, and you're lucky to be alive because you refused to, accept the name that the white bastard was trying to make you accept. Nope. I'm Kunta Kinte, god damn it. So what I'm saying is, Washington. What I'm saying is, downsized DC is one of those places that they saw fit to become a corporation, and therefore they asked permission from the government to let them be a corporation, which means the government created it, the corporation, I mean, and is a partner in that. And then I'm going to ask, the IRS and so on, to can I be immune from taxation? Because I'm an organization that's tax exempt and non-profit. Except for those people who actually get paid to be a part of DC, downsized DC. And, secretaries and whatever. And I suppose the officers, corporate officers, might get paid because they probably work at this full time down at the office. The downsized DC office in wherever it is. I'm not doing that. Now, I'll be honest with you. At some point in my life, I had a state business license, which is basically an incorporation certificate. I was incorporated on that level as a business because I asked the government for permission to do business. And they said, sure, but you have to, kiss our ass because we're the boss of you now. And I had a contractor's license, which was just another name for another tax requiring, I had to pay in order to do business. Or, in other words, exercise a human inalienable right. I did it. It was expedient at the time, and it was before I knew what I know now, which is there's no tax applicable to me in regards to the income tax, for example. And I don't need the government's permission to be tax exempt because I am unalienably tax exempt. I was born with the right to be tax exempt because what I do is a right which is not taxable, and I don't need permission to exercise a right. It's called a natural, human, inalienable right, or liberty, if you prefer. Now, I could define the word right to you and human rights and give you some kind of summary of my views on that and my definitions of the word rights and so on and how that works and plays in the system in America in the past and present and hopefully not in the future. Anyway, downsized DC. Good people, but I think they're just too nice, is what I'm saying. Because they try to do everything according to some sort of scheme, schematic, plan. They try to function as a tax-exempt corporate entity, which is kind of contradictory to the concept of what they're trying to tell me, or you, or us. For example, they think... and ironically enough, downsized DC never comes out and says it, that the income tax is a criminal activity, a criminal act because the IRS is not allowed to tax people's individual property like that. So I get to plug the book. Dave Champion. I repeat, Dave Champion. 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 Dave Champion. Lives in Trump, Nevada. Trump? No, I don't think it's spelled that way. I think might be Currump. I don't remember. It's in Nevada, at any rate, where he moved because he thought it was a freer place to live than California, which is probably true. The name of his book is Income Tax: Shattering the Myths, and you should get it and read it. And one way or another. I mean, it might cost you a few bucks, or you might could borrow it off someone who has it, or whatever. It's a good book. It's very thorough. It's got like 425 pages, 25 pages of which are more or less references and, substantial proof of what he says, as they say. So anyway, Downsize DC. Get the book, one way or another. I've got it. You could borrow mine if you were close, and I could get it back, because I'm not going to let you have it forever. Duh. Buy your own damn book. And if you hack to the Dave Champion's websites that sells the book on the internet, you might get it for a reasonable price compared to what it used to be. Half price, in other words. I'm assuming you still can. I got mine at half price, according to his price, which actually would have been a third of the price that he set originally. Anyway, get the book. It tells you about all that stuff. And you will know. You will be a learned, educated, knowledgeable person when it comes to the income tax and related issues. So back to Downsizer. I'm going to share with you the newsletter they sent me. And it has to do with, guess what? Principles of freedom and things like that. So I want to get to it. All right. The following is, I'm just reading what was in the newsletter. Quote, we've outlined our principles in detail in the past, but we're over-summarizing them here. And then the newsletter lists these principles. We believe all human rights are inalienable and pre-constitutional. Pre-constitutional, mind you. That is, they don't come from governments, they come from our humanity, that is to say, being born into the human species. I said species, not race. Common misconception there, and a common mistake people make is calling humanity the human race. I say that because words mean what they mean. And race and species, two different things. Race is a distinction of individual, the characteristics of a group of people, like Asian people, or Orientals, or Asian, or just say the Chinese. I did read somewhere one time that Oriental was some sort of slur, but that's just bullshit. All right. As opposed to, the human species is like all human beings as a species, meaning a particular form of animal that fits that criteria. I mean, you and I are human beings. We fit into the criteria. We provide the criteria for being included into the human species. All right? We're clear on that? Human species. Human race. Now, if you want to talk about race, you're talking about different classifications. Caucasian, brown-skinned people, say the Aborigines, or you see what I'm saying? Do I have to spell it out? And if you want to do away with racism, you're going to have to do away with the concept of race and individual characteristics that link you to a group of people that all have common characteristics, like Chinese and Japanese have common characteristics, physically, appearance, and so on. The color or tone of one's skin, for example. So a person who is brown, by the way, black is an all-inclusive term, which is more like a slang word, actually. And I do not consider the word black to be anything other than a slang word, which refers to the brown skin-toned, say, African descent race. And I won't get into the African American crap. That just nonsense. I'm not even going to go there. Whatever. So let me continue. The human rights. And I'm using the word rights because that's what it says. I'll use human rights as opposed to human freedoms or human liberty. But pretty much they mean the same thing. There are distinct definitions of the word rights as opposed to freedoms or liberties. And I won't get into that either. You can look it up in the dictionary and it'll tell you. Hopefully you look at the right dictionary and not the damn socialist tampered with and mutilated one that has tried to turn English into babble. Okay. Pre-constitutional, meaning I had the rights before, well, those rights were passed down to me from my ancestors, etc. And because I was born as a human being, therefore, I was born with those rights. Otherwise, they wouldn't be called natural and inalienable human rights, would they? They'd be called something else, like privileges. I have privileges. You know, I have constitutionally protected privileges. Not the same thing as a right. Sorry. So, the second one, and I quote, "We believe in free association. That is, anyone can visit and stay as long as someone will offer them a room or bed, a meal or a job. Any such arrangements between peaceful parties are nobody else's business." I added the else's. This says nobody's business. Could be somebody's business. So nobody otherwise, outside of that business. Freedom to associate. It's an inalienable human right. And it's always been a right, in the sense of always been a freedom or liberty that one should exercise and do so with impunity, because you have the right to do that. Well, in America, you don't have the right to associate with whoever you want, with whomever you want. Because, whom, who with an M at the end is not always used correctly in America. People say it incorrectly all the time. They whom, when they should have said who. And I'm just giving you a little grammatical lesson here because words mean what they mean. And they are spelled properly or not. By the way, I use poetic license to spell words differently than other people generally, because like the word mine, meaning belonging to me, M-Y-N-E. It's an old-fashioned way of spelling it, but I like it. And I've become, it's a habit now. It's become a part of my spelling, procedural way of doing things. I spell it M-Y-N-E instead of M-I-N-E because I think it's prettier than the other word. And it's sort of like distinguishes the word mine from like a coal mine, which is M-I-N-E. So I kind of distinguish the word and give it its own meaning, give it its own worth, in particular to the category in which I'm trying to talk. So now I'm not talking about coal mines, so why would I spell it like a coal mine? I know words are spelled the same that have different meanings. I understand that. But I'm saying that I just prefer M-Y-N-E. It's sort of poetic, and I like poetry, and I write poetry, and so on. It's not misspelled accidentally. I haven't turned the word mine into babble by doing so. By making the I a Y, I haven't changed the meaning of the word. You could say I've just created a different form of the word, which was taken from history, which goes back 200 or 300 years ago. It was spelled M-Y-N-E by some people. Maybe most people. Anyway, use the word who when you should. Use the word whom when you should. It's just good, proper English methods. All right. Freedom to associate. That means you can talk to anyone you want, hang out with anyone you want, visit with anyone you want, live with anyone you want, join any organization or group of people, let's say a club. I'm not going to say any examples here. If you want to be a Boy Scout and join the Boy Scout organization, I don't. I did. I was a long time ago. But I don't belong to that organization now. for reasons that are quite valid. Anyway, freedom to associate. Let me give you an example here of where we're not free to associate because it is a felony to associate or exercise your inalienable human right to associate with another human being. Like, for example, I'm not allowed to talk to a teenager. Oh, by the way, that's an adolescent, not a child. Biologically factual. Child is under 12 or prepubescent. Once you're a child, you go through the maturing process, a human development process, which is biological, and you can't change that because the laws of nature say, you are. And if you're still alive, at some point in your life, you're going to change from a child into an adolescent and then into an adult. That's just freaking common sense. Surprisingly enough, probably 99% of the human race, or at least Americans, don't have a clue about that. They're like totally ignorant and don't know. And illiterate, and therefore they don't know what someone's talking about when they say things. Freedom to associate, big time. So, talking to a teenager, for example, could get me 35 years in prison. Seriously, Title 18, U.S. Code, an abomination. One of the most evil laws ever. And of course it is invalid because they can't have that law because it's against the rules to have that law. It's like dress codes. Remember? In a free country, the government doesn't tell you who you can associate with. And doesn't make it a crime if you choose to associate with someone who's, say, 17. Who also wishes and wills it that you and they would associate with each other. And this is just common sense to me. I mean, how anybody can not know this is mind-boggling. I would think if you have an IQ over fucking 50, you would know that what I just said. All right, moving on. Quote, we maintain that the Constitution restricts the federal government to a limited set of enumerated powers. That's true. Unfortunately, the government ignores those restrictions and does whatever the fuck it wants, including committing crimes against humanity, etc., etc. More quote. That is, the only powers the feds have are those specifically mentioned in the Constitution. All other powers belong to the various states and the people, and the federal government has no enumerated power over immigration. Only citizenship, naturalization, in parentheses, is specified in the Constitution. None of these stands are new for us, are they? Well, maybe you, because you may not know. I'm not saying you're ignorant, I'm just saying you don't know, maybe, or you don't understand, which means comprehend. All right. All right, hold on. On February 1st, we sent a message opposing the Trump immigration ban against the citizens of 7 nations. Since then, we've actually received messages telling us things like, more quotes, you never criticized President Obama when he did unconstitutional things? Really? Really? I'm still reading. Someone actually wrote that when 5 minutes at our blog would have turned up hundreds of such items. Yes, well, Downsize DC does point out unconstitutional things done by Obama. I know, I've read them. I know that they do. Okay. So let's take a break and let me catch up on myself here. Hold on. All right. Read some more here. We've also been called Democrats, and we've been told that we, quote, are endangering our country with partisan hate, fear-mongering, and outright lies, end quote. And I say, like Downsize DC says in the newsletter, Amazing. Just simply fucking amazing. Well, they didn't say fucking, but you know what I mean. The little picture here. Post something against a Republican. This page is taken over by liberals. Unlikely. The next picture says, post something against a Democrat. This page is taken over by Republicans. Also unlikely. It's just a side there. All right. More quoting. We indicated we'd do what we'd done. What? All right, I'll just read it. It makes sense. Fine. We indicated we'd do what we'd done for both Presidents Bush and Obama. We'd support what the president got right and oppose what he got wrong. Of course, it's the tendency of those in power to get far more wrong than they get right, which is absolutely true, right? Not even my opinion. All right. All right, hold on. All right, some more quote here. Let's discuss, and it says here, this wasn't about Trump. This was about a policy. And we're talking about the Obamacare and, okay. So, let's discuss the immigration ban. And let me start by dealing with an assertion repeatedly made by us. I'm talking for Downsized DC now. I'm quoting from the letter. Not my words. Quoting what they say. I'm reading what they're saying out loud to you. People kept telling us, or me, as the case may be, it's not a ban. Well, it was a ban. Duh, it was a 90-day ban. And Trump spokespeople talked as if the intent was to shape it into something more permanent. This wasn't mere semantics. Question about the word semantics. All right. Tell this Christian family it wasn't a ban. Christian ban. It gives you a link to something. I'm not going to go there. But many were angry, and that doesn't mean they merely disagreed. Debate is always welcome, and I managed to carry on correspondence with more than a dozen letter writers. No, when I say these messages were angry, I mean they were heated, full of invectives. I call that venom, but whatever. We were told that we at Downsized DC should go live with the terrorists, want tax money to be used to fund killers coming here, used anti-American rhetoric, and we're perverted liberals who could share a bathroom stall together. Okay, I admit it. I laughed a bit at that one. End quote. All right, hold on. In the letter here, it's talking about the war on poverty. That didn't reduce poverty a bit. Actually, it got worse afterwards, and I was a part of that. I went to Washington, D.C., and call it a protest or a campaign. I was a part of the campaign for the war on poverty, so to speak. A drug war that creates criminal gangs? Really? Question mark. So I was just sharing that with you from DC, and of course they're concerned because people were quitting their organization because of the thing they did in regards to the immigration ban thing and so on. It's unfortunate. I'm not going to commit myself to financially supporting Downsized DC. I just can't pay everybody. So what I want to do is I'm going to pass this on, share it on Facebook and Google Plus and so forth. All right, read that to you. And the thing is this. in America, we have the inalienable human right, natural right. I like using the word natural because it kind of distinguishes between what you have in a natural sense and an unalienable sense. Human rights or freedoms in a way that distinguishes between that and, say, government granted rights. I should say the concept of government granted rights, since there are no such things, as opposed to government granted privileges. Again, my concern here is, one, freedom of speech. Well, my main concern here is, the major concern is freedom itself and the right to be free and do as you please with your life and do what you feel is something you want to do or believe that you should do, something that does not harm any other human being. And if you choose to, as an example, if you choose to drink alcohol to the point where you get diseased and destroy your liver and die, then that's on you, pal. No amount of laws is going to change that. You have the right to do that, even if it is not good for you. I've heard people say things like, well, we pass these laws for your own good, which of course is just total nonsense, because there's nothing good about a law that infringes upon my rights or my natural inalienable human freedom. Title 18 being one of those evil laws that needs to be repealed immediately, and people need across the country. All Americans should be like up in arms over this. But most of them have been brainwashed, indoctrinated, manipulated, conditioned to believe nonsense, stupid shit, and lies. And it's just foolish. But apparently most Americans are foolish. The right to associate, the right to contract, the right to do as you please, as long as you do not harm another person or infringe upon their right to do as they please. This is like the golden rule of laws. It's the only law we need in this country. There could be a subset of laws that are written down just for the sake of expediency. For example, the right not to be put in a cage without having any real valid reason for the government to do so. The right to talk to whoever you want and say whatever you want to that person. If they're willing to listen, government has no say in that. It does say, but it's wrong to say, is what I'm telling you. It's a crime against humanity. And I'm going to keep harping on that phrase because that's what it is. Humanity is, all of the human species all over the planet. That's 7.4 billion or 6.4 billion, whatever. Lots of people, billions. And the idea that the United States government, federal government, the corporate government of America, makes laws that are a violation of human rights, specifically Americans, for example. It is, in a strict sense of the concept, a crime against humanity in the fact that all Americans are humans. And the U.S. government can very well employ these same criminal tactics of making laws that are invalid or unconstitutional or violate the principles of freedom or violate the human inalienable rights, etc. Could very well apply to everybody on the planet at some point, depending on to what degree the government enforces the illegal law. I won't get into the examples, but if it's a natural, unalienable human right, then it applies to all human beings on the planet. I think, personally, I think should be probably a universal thinking here, is that every human being on the face of the earth has the natural inalienable human right of self-defense, the natural inalienable human right to associate with whoever they please, and the natural inalienable human right to talk to whoever will listen or who is willing to engage in conversation, etc. And yes, this includes teenagers. And these people in America, I swear to God, have got to be the dumbest people on the planet. I'm not going to compare them to other people any more than that, but I'm pretty sure that there are people on the planet somewhere else outside of America that actually have more sense than most Americans. The right to wear what you want. If you have a lot of money and you wish to buy clothes with that money, fancy clothes, custom-made clothes, expensive clothes, then that's your right. If on the other hand you are a poor person and you don't have the money to buy custom-made tailored suits and so on, then you're just not going to have that. Unless you get a patron who is rich. However, you have the same right as I have the same right, as all people have the same right, and this is something that people apparently have a difficult time comprehending. Teenagers have the same human rights as everybody else, including adults. The exact same rights, because it's a contradiction to suggest that all adult human beings have the right, and natural, inalienable human right that you got from birth, by virtue of being born into this human species, then it's a contradiction, isn't it, to suggest that some of those people don't have that right. That's just fucking ridiculous. And the fact that human beings, Americans, can't comprehend that, can't grasp the concept of that's not right. That's like hypocrisy and irony and contradiction and just totally ridiculous, and it's obvious. And how can it not be obvious? How can you not see that if you live in a free country that espouses freedom and exercising the rights of every human being on a planet, not that people in China can do that, but they should, because they have human rights, to suggest that the government can separate and discriminate against a whole class of people that are under the age of 18 is preposterous and obviously a contradiction. All men are created equal except for teenagers. Look at it that way. Everybody can do whatever they want. They're free to do as they please. They have unalienable natural human rights except for teenagers. Well, one, that's against the law. Yeah, it's against the law. And secondly, it's a violation of the Constitution if the government does that, discriminates by making laws that violate the rights of teenagers, for example. And there are laws that do violate the rights of teenagers. And it violates the rights of adults by claiming that talking to a teenager, let's say about sex, is a crime, a felony. So what I'm getting at here is, simply put, the government, through its laws and through its actions, violate the very laws that it is bound to obey. And the contradiction is obvious. And this is really mind-boggling, because there are times when I say stuff that, this is true, and I have plenty of evidence to support that, and plus the fact that it's just plain obvious that anybody with a fucking brain knows that it's true. The sky is up. 2 and 2 is 4. And the principles of freedom that this country is supposed to be founded upon and function under, which it doesn't now, but it's supposed to because, duh, it's just supposed to. So you can't have laws discriminating against teenagers or those under 18. By the way, 18 is an arbitrary number. It's fabricated out of thin air. It means nothing. Nature doesn't recognize 18 as anything significant. It just doesn't. The people have this in their head. It's like they're carrying around all this, shit in their head. Like, I would think the stink alone would cause them to stop doing it and just get that shit out of their heads and flush it. 18 is the age, It's like the age of consent. Like, all right, the age of consent is like 18 or 16 or whatever. Well, the government has no right, no power, no jurisdiction, no nothing. Just doesn't have the right to do that. Set age of consent laws. Age of consent through law. You can't, because that's discrimination. It's against the law to discriminate. For the government to discriminate, So it's obviously illegal. And it's obviously a violation of human rights. It's obviously contradictory to the very principles of freedom. It is obvious. Come on. It's fucking obvious. And somebody, had the balls to actually tell me, oh, it's not obvious to me. Oh, well, then you're a fucking blind idiot. Because there it is. I'm sorry. You can't see it, then you're not looking. You're in a fucking coma. So whoever said it to me, I don't remember who his name is on one of my social media sites. It's just not even. It's not even laughable. It's just outrageously sad. Yes, of course it's obvious. And if you don't see it, you're not trying. You're just totally not trying. So don't give me that shit. Here's a tip. Don't say things like that to me, because I will think you are an absolute fool, and say nasty things about you, to you, and, virtually slap you up the side of the face a few times, because it's just absolutely preposterous. Don't go there. And if you want to say that, believe that, think that, whatever, say it, don't say it to me. Because I'll just totally disrespect you. I'll totally find you contemptible and disgusting. Really. Am I clear on that? I hope so. All right, I'm going to end this segment, and because I'm running out of time, and I got some other things I'm going to do. So, have a good day. I don't even know why people say that. You're not going to have a good day if you're not free. Guarantee it. All right, so I'll just say bye for now. See you next time. Or talk to you next time. Okay? Bye-bye. Archer Monologues. D. McClellan. Thanks.